Hi, welcome to Comic Talk. I'm Joshua.
And I'm Drew.
And this week we are talking about Batman Detective Comics, DC Universe Rebirth, Volume 1. Alright, so we're going to talk about one of our few hopes that we had left for Rebirth, right?
Yeah.
This one we left off back when we were still doing the poll. We tried a bunch of the Rebirth stuff, and we had a few that we thought we'd just wait. This was one of them. This is James Tynion. It's a bunch of people, so I got to read it. James Tynion the fourth, Eddie or maybe Ivy. James Tynion Ivy. I don't know. I never asked. Eddie Barrows, Alvarez, Martinez, Eber Ferreira, and Raul Fernandez. It's called Rise of the Batman, and it really focuses mostly around Kate Kane, right?
It does.
Batwoman.
It does. And I think that we should go into this just saying that it's going to be all spoilery. So
yeah, I think so.
It's not a good cutoff point.
Yeah.
There's this army sort of forming in Gotham, and they have ill intentions for the Bat people, so they have to get together and try to combat that before it gets out of hand.
Batman gets the band together.
Yeah.
Kind of situation with mostly characters that were floating around in the periphery of the New 52 era, Orphan and...
Yeah, it seems like they put these characters together a lot. It's almost like they have their own sort of like side family now with Orphan and Spoiler and Red Robin, and there's one more that's usually in there. Bluebird, I think.
Bluebird, yeah.
Yeah, she's usually in there. She wasn't in this one.
Right. A lot of these characters were in the Batman and Robin All-Star... Eternal, yeah. Batman and Robin Eternal, which we actually liked to a pretty good degree. And I think James Tynion had a big hand in that, too.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of them were in Batman Eternal, too. So they're the Eternal family.
Yeah. So they did add Clayface to the group, which really I thought was going to add a lot of new dimension to it, but it kind of didn't.
It started to. It almost like did the Snyder thing, where it's like really good setup and then no payoff.
Right, right. Let's, do the people who can only stand to watch videos for 3 or 4 minutes thing. What did you think?
I mean, it's a decent enough Batman story. I wouldn't really recommend it to too many people. I probably wouldn't have read it if it wasn't for the show. I'm not going to put it in my top anything of all time. But if you just need like another Batman story to read, like it's better than a lot of the stuff we've read. I think so.
Yeah, it was, I think, for a Rebirth title, it does okay. It's... I don't know if there's anything else from Rebirth I've read that has the Rebirth branding on it that I thought was as good as this. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I really thought this was that great. I'm with you.
Yeah. I mean, we were even disappointed in the Tom King Batman, which we were like super pumped about.
Right.
And then,
Right, and it really kind of failed to deliver. I would say the closest thing in terms of storytelling, ride this train here with me for a minute.
Okay.
Young Justice TV show.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
It feels very similar. It's like the younger characters, you get these quick sort of character moments, but you don't dwell on them. There's no character drama per se. It's mostly the adventure that's going forward.
Sure.
It's mostly antagonists that are older, that are, somehow they're not their peers, right? And it's sort of pushing these characters forward, and you get these little quick character moments between them that are fun and interesting and make you go, oh, yeah, I really like that guy. I would like to know more about that. Stay tuned for the next episode, right?
Right, sure. And I would even put it probably on the later side of the Young Justice, because I think in the second, or I don't even know if I got a third season, but in the later half of it, it started to get a little bit more focused on the characters themselves and, their fears and ambitions and stuff like that. And it wasn't anything super deep, but it was a nice little touch. And we get a lot of that in here. It takes all of the characters at least to a different sort of dimension than we're used to seeing them with.
Right.
Like, we learn something that we wouldn't have known otherwise about all of these characters. It does a very good job of making it seem like separate people instead of just like the homogenous team.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah, agreed.
that was probably my favorite part about it, is that it was just a step above like what I expected for a standard ass DC team book.
Right. I'm completely with you. There was never anything that happened throughout this book that shocked me, or
I predicted the fucking thing from the beginning.
Right,
you know?
right.
It's so obvious. Like,
yeah, it's all very paint by numbers, including all the character beats. Right. There's never anything that isn't telegraphed way ahead of time. There's no interesting reveals about characters that you don't know is going to happen. But James Tynion is quite good at painting the moments that he wants to paint in a way that makes you like the characters and feel like you're getting some progression, right? In very much the way like a good cartoon of,
yeah, exactly,
would do. It's very much in that realm of stuff, even though it, to me, we're back at this thing where Detective Comics is kind of the opposite of what I feel like a Detective Comic should be, which should be the more cerebral.
On that note, there was a nod to Hub City in there. I don't know if you caught it.
I don't think I did.
And it was just a moment in time, but they are maintaining the question universe. It's happening. Just a name drop here or there. That's all.
Right.
Leave me hope. Which is ironically like what Detective Comics should be.
Right. But yeah, which, is what you would want. If I was in charge of the DC world, the question would be a character that would be in Detective Comics, right?
Yeah.
I'd have Renee Montoya in Detective Comics. I'd have Harvey Bullock. And we had that a little bit in the New 52 stuff.
It was poorly executed.
But it was really poorly executed and wasn't the cerebral kind of stories we wanted. But this takes the opposite tact. This turns Detective Comics into like the adventure team book of the Batman universe, which...
It's the less mature Batman.
It's the less detective-y, too, because they're really just out there punching and kicking stuff. I mean, that's really... what most of this is
and
just...
It's absurd. I mean, like, even looking at the name, like, which one's going to appeal to which person?
Right.
Which person's going to grab Batman? Which person's going to grab Detective Comics? Because you're kind of disappointing both of them.
Right. Yeah, you got it. They got it backwards. It probably would have made a lot more sense to put Tom King on Detective Comics and let him do something like he did in Sheriff of Baghdad, and then... Sheriff of Babylon, you're right, yeah. And then, put Tynion over on Batman and do this big, high-flying, crazy, fun adventure stuff.
Kind of backtracking a little bit and going back to the cartoony thing, it almost reminds me of, like, the Lego movies. I don't know if you've seen the Lego Batman movie yet.
Sure.
I mean, it's obvious that it's cartoony, and going into it, you're going to be able to predict everything else, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't enjoyable.
That it's not fun to read. Yeah, I do have to say that, I got through this pretty quick. I didn't at any point feel like, I got to read another issue of it.
The artwork, and we'll get to that. But
yeah, I made it through it okay. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't ever tell somebody that said, hey, I think I want to read Detective Comics. I have a general idea what it's going to be. It looks fun. Should I read it? I wouldn't be like, no. You know what I mean? If they know what it is, okay, read it. If you think you got a good idea, then go for it. You won't hate it. Yeah. What do you got? Something about the art, right?
Oh, you want to talk about that?
Let's go ahead and go into the art. Okay. It sounded like you had something about it.
Yeah, that pissed me off constantly. Like, Batman looks like he has an underbite in, like, half of the panels. They try to do this thing where they make Orphan's movements, like, very ballet-esque, but it just ends up kind of looking weird and, like, distorted figure and stuff. And it was just very unrefined overall.
Yeah, I agree. There's part of the problem...
Oh, and the paneling was sometimes hard to follow. It's like,
hard
what
to follow.
The fuck?
Yeah, part of the problem is... Okay, so this is very Batwoman-centric. And the last Batwoman thing we had was... I mean, it was like 4 or 5 years ago, but it was J.H. Williams III doing some really trippy, crazy paneling. Right? I don't know if you looked at that when it was out. I mean, dude did some crazy paneling. Everything was... I saw a panel in here that was so obviously them trying to rip it off. Like, everything was like this stuff here. All the time. Like, lots of, lots of shapes and things that denote what's happening, and crazy glass shatters, all that kind of stuff. And you can tell that every time Batwoman shows up on the page, they try to ape that style. But the artists here are so like discount Jim Lee's. It's like dollar bin Jim Lee art, or like what Jim Lee probably would do as a sketch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, there's no Mandarin collars, but there might as well be. They all look like plastic figurines, you know?
Yeah. So that was kind of disappointing, and it definitely didn't help that I was on the fact, or definitely didn't help the fact that I was kind of on the fence about the book in general. That was kind of the tipping point. Like, yeah. If it had better artwork, I mean, I still wouldn't put it in like top 10, but I would think more highly of it nonetheless.
Right. It reminds me a lot of the new 52 Suicide Squad stuff.
I could see that.
Where it's just unnecessarily sort of plasticky and shiny, and just like it's like the DC House style thing that neither of us have ever been particularly big fans of. And again, I mean, it really DC House style just means like a shitty version of Jim Lee stuff, which, I mean, I think we're outliers, but Jim Lee in my mind is already a shitty version of comic book art. It's like it's Jim Lee is like the straight to video cinematographer of the comic book world. He churns out a lot of stuff. People trust him to make money, right? But I don't think like anything he does really has a high level of craft or art to it. You know what I mean? Or he's like this summer blockbuster, I guess.
Yeah, he's just been serviceable for so long that it's kind of like become...
Right, he's the Transformers of comic book artists, or the Fast and the Furious or something.
Yeah.
You know what you're going to get. There's nothing great about it, but there's a whole lot of people that recognize it and feel comfortable watching it. They don't have to go, oh, what is this art about, right? Like, what's going on?
What is this art about?
What is this? This doesn't look like what I expected a comic book to look like.
Yeah, and I mean, he's not as bad as like Layfield or something like that, No,
there's plenty of worse.
Yeah, who I feel like is just like him on steroids, quote unquote. Like everything I don't like about him just pumped up even more.
Right.
But yeah, I guess most of the DC art I like it's been like a pre-glossy page,
Yeah, agreed.
Which is really unfortunate. Man, it'd be cool if they released like Saga the Swamp Thing on the nice paper now or something like that.
I don't even know if it would work on the nice paper though.
That's the thing.
It might ruin it. It might completely destroy the look of it. But it's just artistically the whole thing is a little stiff and just not at the top of its game. There's nothing non-serviceable about it, I found. Like you said, there were a few points where I did like have to kind of step back and look at the page as a whole to try to understand like where I'm supposed to go next, which anytime the reader has to stop and try to figure out where they're going.
Yeah, you're taking them out of the story, you failed as an artist.
You've not done your job correctly. Yeah, that's the worst thing you can do. I mean, you can draw something that looks stupid, right? Like I see people all the time post pictures of what is up with this guy's leg, or look at this funny face, on social media and Reddit and shit. And I always think like, well, so what? Like, who cares? It's art, right? Like some things you focus on and other things are going to look silly.
Yeah, there's certain things.
Right?
I mean, like, back to the underbite thing, that being like a continuous theme in this book, that really kind of...
Right, over and over, and like it seems to be an intentional stylistic choice.
Right, it's like, why are you doing this? And that takes me out of the story. So.
Right,
but yeah, usually like somebody's foot being a little bit too far in the background and people are all like up in arms about it.
Their arms short, like whatever. That's not a big deal. When I feel like an artist fails when you can't follow the art. That is the biggest, fastest way to fail as an artist in a comic book to me, because that's the entire point of the form, right? Like that's what it's there for. That's what you're doing is moving through the images, right? And
sort of splitting up the dialogue, and I mean that's your job.
Yeah, and it's not even confusing. It's not like it's some high level artistic choice, right, to get some sort of concept across. I've seen some things. There's some things in Sandman for example, where there is no clear delineation of where you're supposed to read, and it's intentional.
It's the Morrison effect on an art scale. Like, it's more about eliciting a feeling,
right,
or an atmosphere or something like that, than actually necessarily conveying certain things.
Like a linear passage.
Right. Yeah.
Right, but there's nothing like that here. No. This is an adventure story, right? This is very, like, he punches this guy, and then this guy jumps over here and does a flip and kicks that guy, right? But you look at it, and it's like, well, why is he on the ground? And then he's standing up. Oh, I see. He wasn't on the ground. He kicked him first. You got to read it this way.
Yeah.
And that you've ruined it. You've failed.
Z pattern and then get the corners.
Right. Get the corners last for some reason. Yeah, so artistically, I felt like it was really pretty below par, really. But only probably because we have pretty high artistic standards.
See, I don't feel like I have really high artistic standards. It's like, just, and I hate to say it this way, but it's like, just don't fuck it up.
Right.
You know, I mean, like, don't ruin the story with something you're supposed to be supplementing it with.
I feel like what I'm trying to say is maybe we're not the demographic for this in the first place.
Well, definitely.
Because I feel the same way about the writing. Like, I think everything about this book was serviceable for probably the people who want to read it and are going out to pick it up, not to review it. For others that might be overly critical, looking for things that match the overly critical mind in the mainstream media, right? Which is it's kind of the niche we're searching for, if you haven't figured that out yet. Right, we're looking for things that maybe a more high-minded individual, which, I mean, that sounds really pretentious, but...
but there's certain things you don't get off, like, comic book resources.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about the fucking 10 powers that you didn't know Flash had. Right.
Who gives a shit?
Right.
Yeah, but I don't think this is going to be one of those things. You know, if you're the kind of viewer watching us because you want to find some interesting things to read, no, probably not that. Move on. Next one.
Yeah. If you got here on accident, you might be pretty into it, actually.
Yeah. I mean, if you've liked...
You hate the video so far, you'd probably be really into it.
Right. If you liked Rebirth in general, if you think that it's been a good initiative, you probably, for real, will probably like this.
Or like New 52 Aquaman, if you really like that.
Yeah, this is going to be your cup of tea, for real. If you found that stuff to be a little lacking, you're going to feel the exact same way about this one.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to pretty much wrap up that one. You can always, do this thing here to subscribe. In the future here, I think we're going to talk about Mouse finally here coming up pretty soon. Yeah, we're going to do 7 to Eternity. We got Wonder Woman from Rebirth coming up. We got some stuff right here and also right there. So check it out.
Click things later.